The founders you're watching post every day aren't doing it alone. Not the editing, not the publishing, not the clips, not the scheduling. And here's what keeps showing up in the comments on the biggest channels in this space. Ghostwriters, editors, social media managers, media buyers, ad creators, funnel builders. That's not one person posting consistently. That's a department. The founder whose name is on the content, their job was to show up and record. Everything else was someone else. That's not a criticism, that's leverage. But nobody ever explains that, and the silence around it is costing founders who are trying to replicate the output without knowing the infrastructure behind it. I'm Michael Reynolds. This is Hard Truths. Let's get into it. I had a founder come to us who had been trying to do it themselves for 6 months. Here's what that actually looked like for them. Monday, they recorded. Tuesday, they spent 2 hours in the editing software trying to remember how to use it. Wednesday, they gave up on the video edit and decided to just post audio. Thursday, they realized the audio had background noise and they spent an hour trying to fix that. Friday, they posted something, not what they had planned, but something, and felt behind before the week was even over. The clips never even got made. The show notes were a paragraph written in 5 minutes. The thumbnail was a screenshot. They did it! Yay! But it cost them a week of mental energy and the output didn't match their reputation. Here's what the same week looks like with a system running. The founder records on Monday, they send the file, and by Thursday, the episode is edited, published, and live on every platform. The clips are scheduled across the week, the thumbnail is designed, the show notes are written, the SEO is done. The founder spent 2 hours, the system spent 12. Same content, completely different output, completely different cost to the person whose name is on it. That's the gap. And it exists because most founders are trying to run a production operation on top of running an actual business without realizing that's what they're doing. Okay, let's make that 12 hours concrete. 1 long-form episode per week. Prep and outlining. 1 to 2 hours before a single frame is even filmed. Filming, then the raw file goes somewhere and someone opens it. Audio editing, removing dead air, false starts, background noise, 45 minutes to an hour minimum. Video editing, color, cuts, graphics, captions, another hour, probably 2. Thumbnail, a designed asset built to stop a scroll in under a second. A separate skill, a separate tool, a separate hour. SEO, title, description, tags, chapter markers written wrong. The episode gets seen by nobody. 30 to 45 minutes maybe. Publishing and distribution, show notes, then short form clips. Someone watches the full episode, identifies 3 to 5 moments, cuts them, captions them, formats them for vertical, 2 to 3 hours for 5 clips. Conservative total for 1 episode per week, 8 to 12 hours of production work every week without missing. That's a part-time job on top of running the actual business. The founders who look effortless aren't doing this themselves. They figured out what to stop doing. Specifically the execution work that doesn't require them. A founder at 2 million or 5 million in revenue who is personally editing their own videos is doing the equivalent of personally filing their own taxes. Not because they can't, because the opportunity cost is enormous. Every hour in a video editor is an hour not spent advising a client, closing a deal, or doing the thinking that only they can do. That's not a productivity tip, that's a structural problem. And yes, there are AI tools out there that promise to cut some of this down. Auto editors, clip makers, automatic captions, and graphics. Some of these are genuinely useful for specific tasks, but what I've seen consistently is that setting them up takes longer than expected. The output needs heavy reviewing and correcting, and the quality ceiling is lower than what a founder at this level actually needs their presence to look like. AI tools can reduce the hours, but they don't eliminate the judgment, the taste, or the standard. And for founders who want their content presence to match their professional reputation, the standard is the whole point. And that standard is exactly what the most successful founders have figured out. Not by doing more, but by being honest about how their system actually works. The problem isn't that successful founders have teams. That's smart delegation. The problem is that the model is never explained. The content always says, here's what I do, not here's what my team does so I can focus on thinking and recording. That omission creates a false benchmark. Founders watching conclude that the standard is doing everything yourself. So when they can't keep up with the editing, publishing, and running their actual business simultaneously, they decide they're failing at discipline or consistency. They're not failing at discipline, they're misreading what they're watching. We cannot thank Alex enough, but unless we turn his teachings into action, nothing will change. That's a capable, motivated founder who understood the argument and still couldn't bridge the gap between knowing and doing. Not because they lacked discipline, because the model they were trying to execute was never designed for one person to run alone. The founders who close this gap, who are transparent about what their system actually looks like, build credibility faster than anyone maintaining the polished illusion, because their audience stops wondering how they do it all and starts trusting what they're seeing is real. So here's the distinction that changes everything. There's a difference between being a content creator and having a content presence. A content creator builds their life around producing content. Formats, trends, algorithm, posting schedules. Content is their primary product. Everything else, the business, the offers, the clients, exists in service of the content operation. That model works for people whose business is content. It does not work for founders whose business is something else. A founder with a content presence has a system that produces content around their life. The content serves the business. The business does not serve the content. The founder shows up to record because they have something to say, not because the algorithm requires them to. Everything after the recording is handled without them. Most of the advice in this space is written for content creators and applied by founders who have a business to run. That mismatch is why capable, successful founders try content multiple times and quit every time. Not because they failed at content, because they were given a model designed for somebody else. What you actually want is simple: a professional presence that matches your reputation, to be findable, credible, and visible to the people you're trying to reach. Inbound opportunities that come because of what people have seen and heard from you. None of that requires you to become a content creator. All of it requires you to have a content presence. And here's what that produces over time. Not virality, not overnight growth, compounding credibility. Every episode is another piece of evidence that you know what you're talking about. Every week without a missed publish date is another signal that you are consistent and professional. Consistency does not come from discipline. It comes from infrastructure. The founders who publish every week without fail don't have better willpower. They have a system that runs without them having to think about it. Here's the hard truth. The founders you're comparing yourself to aren't doing more than you. They're actually doing less, specifically the things that don't require them. And that's what's making them look effortless while you're burning out trying to do everything yourself. You don't need more discipline. You don't need a better content strategy. You need a system that handles execution so you can focus on the only thing that actually requires you, showing up and saying the thing that only you can say. The content that builds authority isn't the content that takes the most effort from you. It's the content that most accurately represents your expertise, published consistently, over time. Stop trying to be your own production team. Start being what you actually are, the authority, the talent, the reason anyone's watching in the first place. I'm Michael Reynolds. We publish every Monday. Subscribe if you want more of this every week. I'll see you next week.